Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We talked to GM Omar Khan, and he gave a lot of indications that Aaron Rodgers is looking like he's going to be back. But also, who might also be back? Patrick Queen, Jalen Ramsey, the entire 2023 draft class. A lot of things were discussed. We'll get you clips from the combine right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan Saunders joining today. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And also a reminder, this is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcasting network in the world. Check out all our shows there at lockedonpodcast.com. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com. Alan, we missed you on Tuesdays. We had a lot of people complaining, where's my Alan Saunders Tuesday episode? So it's on Wednesday, but we're here. But Alan, we got a chance to talk to Omar Khan as we do at the start of every combine week. And he said a lot. He said a lot of things, but I want to focus on quarterback first.
Said a lot of words.
A lot of
words.
Yes. But he said many words. We're going to try to parse through the words that matter because those were far between. But what was your sense in how he's approaching this quarterback situation this year? Because that is the biggest question that everyone has about the Steelers right now.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that plan A is for the Steelers to bring Aaron Rodgers back. I mean, there's no reason for them to be talking about him like the way they're talking about him if that's not the plan A. However, I will also say that at this time last year, Omar was saying that bringing back Russell Wilson or Justin Fields was the plan. And this time, the year before that, Omar was saying he had full faith in Kenny Pickett.
It's a Kenny Pickett.
Now, I'm not sure I even believe the first one. The second one, the Pickett thing. The second one, I do believe that they wanted to bring Justin Fields back. They just got outbid, basically, by the Jets. I think it's just an illustrative example that plan A on February 24th doesn't always mean that much. But I think it's very clear that that is the plan anyway at this point.
I agree. I wanted to give people a sense of how Omar Khan sounded. Here was him when he addressed Aaron Rodgers, and we tried to press him on some questions when we talked to him on Tuesday at the NFL Combine.
Nothing new to add. I've been in communication with Aaron. I think Mike has. I know Mike has also. We've had good communication, honest communication, but nothing new to report there. So happy to take any questions.
Do you have a deadline?
No deadline. All I'll tell you guys is I don't foresee this going like it did last year. So,
is it important to have a decision before free agency begins or during free agency?
I mean, I don't really want to say it has to be done by then. I'd like to have an idea, but it just isn't going to go like it did last year.
Omar, would his decision affect anything you do in the draft? What you hope to do, intend to do?
I think certainly not just his decision, but just how the offseason progresses and who we're able to sign, who we're able to acquire. That'll all have an effect. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and April.
Omar, is it your guys' desire to have him be the starting quarterback this year?
I think we've had a conversation and we've expressed it. It was a really good experience with Aaron, and that option's still out there.
Regardless of what happens with Aaron Rodgers, what is this organization's vision, and how do you plan to address the quarterback position long term?
Yeah, so we mentioned Aaron, but look, we're all in this. We all agree that we're looking for that next franchise guy. We're not there yet, and we may have the guy on the roster. We don't know. And we're excited to work with Will, but we know that it has to be addressed, and we're all looking for the same thing. We're just not there yet.
So I think there's some acknowledgement here from Omar Khan that, look, guys, we get that this is not the best situation to be in, but this is where this is where the Steelers are. And there's also acknowledged that, like, hey, we liked our experience with Aaron Rodgers. He seemed to like it with us. We're not going to pin him to something, before he's ready to, but we're also not going to sit back and watch until June or whatever to get the official confirmation on this. But I think this kind of highlights what you and I have been talking about for a while, Alan. Sure, if if this was the draft class, maybe this is less of a conversation right now. Or if there was a crazy free agent that was an obvious get that the Steelers felt that they had a good chance to bid for or trade for or something like that available, this might be less of a conversation right now. Or if they already had the guy, this would be less of a conversation. But the bottom line is none of those things are available to them right now. And so that's why Aaron Rodgers is such a priority. I know there's a lot of people that think this is a terrible idea. Just move on, get something else. The Steelers, and he even kind of makes an emphasis in that clip, but also, he did later as well on the podium. The Steelers don't want to forever be doing this. They're doing this because they kind of have to at this point. But the goal is to get a franchise quarterback that they will have for a long time. They're just trying to do what they can for now to best arm themselves.
And I think it's important that you take it in the context of this. The goal of the Pittsburgh Steelers under Omar Khan has been to build this team up through the draft with young players. And I'm sure we're going to talk more of them too,
Yes.
because the young players he's drafted were a big part of this conversation as well. You can take a chance on a quarterback who is more likely than Aaron Rodgers to be an abject failure, but also more likely than Aaron Rodgers to be that next franchise guy, right? You can do that. Okay. But you are then risking the futures of all of the offensive players you're drafting as part of your big picture plan when you do that. I think you and I saw what Aaron Rodgers did for this team in terms of his leadership, his ability to get guys pulling in the right direction. I think we saw, even in a year where the Steelers offense was not dynamic, in a year where the Steelers offense did not get enough people the ball the way that it should have, we still saw guys pulling in the same direction. We still saw team and togetherness. And I think if you go draft somebody in the third round and you throw them in there and say, how bad could it be? That ignores the human beings that have to be doing it if it's bad. And I don't think that it's one thing if you don't have players that you like. If you just think that your team stinks, then fine. If you're the Saints last year and you just like, we don't have enough talent to be good on any planet. Okay, fine. Then maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. Because the next time the Saints are good, there are about 4 guys that were on the team last year that are still going to be on that team. The Steelers don't think that about this team. They like their young core, and they want to do right by them by putting someone competent at the most important position on the field.
And that's the bottom line right now. They're not. There's a lot of people, I think, on the side of just tank. It's been forever since the Steelers have tanked. They haven't had a terrible season in a long time. And the last time they had a losing season, they drafted Ben Roethlisberger. So obviously, if you just have a losing season, it'll just produce that. But what you and I continue to emphasize is it is not that simple. It's not that easy. And when you have that bad of a season, you have a chance to ruin the core that you're developing. And to your point, it would be something. It would mean a bit more, I think, that argument, if the Steelers weren't developing young guys right now, if there wasn't Joey Porter Jr. playing at a high level, if the offensive line wasn't making strides in their progress, if Derek Harmon wasn't a good first-round pick, if other guys like Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith and Darnell Washington, all who we're going to talk about later, by the way, because there was a bunch on them as well. But if there wasn't that group of guys on this roster and this team was just being 10-7 because the same guys that were carrying the team in 2022 are carrying the team right now, then I'd kind of get it, because it'd be like, look, we got so much rebuilding to do. And listen, they have a decent bit of rebuilding to do, but it is not that because they are lacking young talent. We talked about this, I think, just last week, where people are around the NFL, not just in Pittsburgh, but around the NFL, are starting to acknowledge that, like, well, wait a sec. They've got a really good group of guys that are on rookie contracts right now. And so you don't want to throw that away by having a bad year or two because you overcommitted to a quarterback that was more likely to bottom out or had a decent percentage of a chance to bottom out compared to someone that's steady while you're looking for that franchise quarterback when you take that shot.
Yeah. Now, like, there are other options. I don't think that like Aaron Rodgers is the only choice they could make that would be a good choice. Um, I just don't see anything wrong with this approach, given the way the other options look. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Tua. I don't really think Kyler Murray just has the physical size to do it. And he's getting older and also injury prone. And Kirk Cousins is just the same thing you already got. Like, I don't know where the pivot to if you don't want this is that makes any sense to me. Malik Willis is going to get $100 million, says Adam Schefter yesterday. That's swinging out of your shoes. It could work for somebody, but that is a big, big risk. And, he started 6 games in his career. I don't see the alternative that to me seems very attractive at this point than to just doing what the Steelers are talking about doing, which is bringing Aaron Rodgers back.
The Steelers also talked about bringing other guys back, other veterans that they've brought to this team. I want to talk about those in the next segment because that's also been a major talking point for this offseason. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft, where we're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which might be the sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5 Hour Energy has a wide variety of flavors, something for everyone. Among the top flavors is Confetti Crave, a delicious blend of rich and buttery, freshly baked confetti cake, smooth vanilla frosting, and a sprinkle of sweetness in every sip. But watch out for Cotton Candy for its delicious swirl of sugary clouds and fruity twist and a hint of vanilla. And another big contender is Hawaiian Breeze, made with passion fruit, orange, guava flavors, and it's sweet, smooth, tangy, and tart all in one. Find your new favorite 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's talk about Patrick Queen and Jalen Ramsey. And before we do, I want to play what Omar Khan said when we asked him about both of those guys. Here was Omar Khan from Tuesday.
Patrick Queen's been your green out the past 2 years. How have you liked his growth, and is he maybe an extension candidate now he's had in the last year of his deal?
Yeah, PQ's been good for us. I think he likes being here. We like having him a part of the team, and part of the process is going to be for him to get to know us to get to know him. But I'm excited about having him around.
Omar, you guys brought in Jalen Ramsey to be, cornerback. He started the year there, switched to safety. Where do you guys see his future with you guys as far as planning forward with him, as a potential leader for your secondary?
Yeah, Jalen, I can't see enough good things about him. His approach to the game is really awesome. His preparation. His role will kind of shake out. With the new coaching staff as he comes in, but he's got versatility. That's the beauty of Jalen. If you want to play him at corner, he can play corner, nickel, safety. There's a lot of different things he can do. You can blitz him. It's exciting. I know the new coaching staff's excited to work with him, and you can't say enough about what he did for us early in the season. He switched positions. Hadn't practiced at all spring, and he went in there and he did it for us. He's one of the most unselfish football players I've been around.
So, Alan, to your point about how Omar Khan, last couple of years, Justin Fields didn't happen, Kenny Pickett didn't happen, and all the things that have been said, you have to read between the lines about what Omar Khan was saying. And so, speaking glowingly about both of those players, do you think that that's full honesty and that the Steelers are definitely going to have Patrick Queen back and Jalen Ramsey? Or do you think there's a situation where he's buttering up these guys because that's what he's supposed to right now, and the Steelers are going to make some hard choices in a couple weeks here?
I don't see any reason why the Steelers wouldn't want to bring those guys back.
Okay.
But both of those guys are entering the last year of their contracts. Neither of those guys have any guaranteed money left. That's usually a situation where players want to sign a contract extension before they do things like show up for training camp. So if the Steelers have a conversation with someone about a contract extension and say, oh, we are very far apart, or this is never going to work, then maybe there's not even any point in continuing into the 2026 season, right? Maybe you make a move, trade them, something like that, even if it's for something small, just say, okay, move on. They do have elevated salaries. We've talked about this. They don't need the cap space. The free agent classes at their positions aren't deep enough that you feel like you're going to be able to win cap-wise by cutting them. But it's not like they have to stay either. So I think this is more about, can you figure something out that makes everybody happy with the hey, maybe the player's happy to play out the deal and the Steelers are happy to have that. And then it's fine. It's copacetic. But until you have those conversations, I think there's some caution. I did think it was very interesting that he did not commit to a position for Jalen Ramsey. If they were sure about Jalen Ramsey 100% coming back, that would be something I would be doing right now.
I hear you.
I'll just say that. If I was 100% sure that Jalen Ramsey was going to be on my team this fall, before I got to free agency and while I was scouting people in the draft, I would want to know where Jalen Ramsey is playing, because it gets really difficult to try to put the secondary around him together if you spend all offseason thinking he's a safety and then all of a sudden he's a slot. That's something you kind of got to know.
I agree, because you're making specific big roster decisions, big draft decisions, big future investment decisions,
and the value of his contract is very different. If he's an outside cornerback, paying $19 million for Jalen Ramsey is no big deal. I don't think he is, based on what we saw last year. If he's a safety, he's one of the most expensive safeties in the NFL. I'm not sure I'm happy with that.
And I think that when you look at Omar Khan's recent history, he might not be either, because he's been about positional value. He's been about trying to move with the trends of the NFL. And I think that could be an issue there. And so I think that one thing that Omar Khan's going to do is he's going to speak glowingly of his guys, because that's what he's supposed to do right now, right? Like, I think a lot of people look at this and if you take it for face value, you're going to see, oh yeah, well, they're keeping both Patrick Queen and Jalen Ramsey, but I don't think it's that simple. Now, when it comes to Jalen Ramsey, I think that, like you said, his versatility, and that was the thing that Omar Khan highlighted, is useful. And I think that if they were able to put him at slot corner and let him just move around and help in the box and do those things there, and he kind of stayed there, I think that could be useful and good and positive for the future. If he moves to safety, I don't know that it is the free ranging speed of the deep safety that they'd be looking for, and they already have a good strong safety if Deshaun Elliott comes back and is healthy. So that's where I question is this the buttering up part here, where they're talking about our guys are trying to figure out where to put him right now. And granted, they've just assembled this coaching staff a few weeks ago. You and I were talking during the Senior Bowl week just a few weeks ago as they were putting this staff together. So that's going to take time while they're also in the process evaluating this draft class. But to your point, that's a decision that needs to come sooner rather than later, because it changes. You can scout talent and do all that, but when it comes time when March 11th hits and you got to start making decisions on who you're signing at free agency and what holes to leave open for the draft, you need to know where those holes exactly are. And if they're an outside corner, a slot corner, or safety, that changes your calculations.
Yeah, for sure. And look, this is one of those things where it's easy. I'm not accusing Omar of lying here, but it's easy to say, yeah, I would love to have these guys back.
Mm-hmm.
Don't at what price, on what contract,
right,
in what circumstances, right? It's kind of a throwaway thing to say without the rest of those details. And so that's why I'm not necessarily, getting my Steelers depth chart tattooed with Patrick Queen at inside linebacker and Jalen Ramsey somewhere.
Let's talk Queen real quick here. Queen is different because Queen will be what, 26 years old next year?
He's
In
so
the next
young for a guy who's played so much.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing that I think is kind of interesting is that the Steelers are in a position where they have a guy who's making a decent change of money. He's what, $17+ million as a cap hit.
Yeah, I think it's like 13.3 cash this
13.3.
year.
Yeah. So he's getting paid a significant amount of money. He hasn't turned into that star linebacker yet that you're looking for. He hasn't been a bad linebacker at all. In fact, I think he's been good. He just hasn't played at the high level that I think they've been paying out for. But one thing I've noted is that when you have a guy that young, even though he has experience, he can grow from this. And Mike Tomlin even expressed that as the season went on last year, like about, hey, adjusting to having the green dot and being that guy. That's something we knew was coming with this. But is that something you're willing to wait for when, maybe you go and get, a starter at the inside linebacker position? You move on from him, maybe you trade him for some value and you find other ways to address it. I've talked about how if the Steelers went and got Sonny Styles, I think that could be a potential home run pick in the first round this year. If you move on from Patrick Queen to get more assets to do something like that, maybe that's something that you consider there. But, if you were to, let's do it this way. If you were to choose which of these two guys if you had to choose one or the other, who would be most likely on the roster right now, who would you pick and why?
I think it's more likely that Patrick Queen will be on the roster because I think his age makes the idea of extending his contract, which is the friendliest player standpoint outcome of all this, right? Is that they agree to a contract extension is a lot more like I don't see the Steelers redoing Jalen Ramsey's deal again, right? Like I don't not at his age. Whereas I could see the Steelers deciding, okay, 3 more years of Patrick Queen, yes, sign us up. And that's the outcome that greases all the wheels, right? Like if everybody's okay with that and everybody can come together with a number, then there's no reason it won't happen. And I'm not sure I can say the same thing about Ramsey.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. Like when it comes, that's why I brought up.
I'm not saying they'll agree. They may not. Patrick Queen might be like, yeah, I'm sick of Pittsburgh. I hated these 3 years. I don't think so. But anything can happen. But like to me, there's an easy button there that if everybody signs up for, this goes very smoothly. That I'm not sure I necessarily see with Ramsey.
Right. And I think that's the thing here is that you can see Patrick Queen filling an important role as the starting inside linebacker, the green dot guy who can take on the transition period that they're in, because that's the other part of this. This is going to be, a transition into a new defensive coordinator, a new head coach, a new everything for how the Steelers try to operate, and having a guy who, in the locker room has that experience being that leader on the field. I think that could be crucial to what the Steelers are trying to do moving forward. And that's not to say Jalen Ramsey wouldn't be crucial either, because I think there were some important games. As Omar Khan pointed out, he said that guy was important to us. Early on, he made some serious plays. He helped them win that Jets game. He helped them win a few games early on. He also, when he flipped to safety, he helped to give them a reprieve at a position that was truly a liability in the middle part of the season. So those things can't be overlooked. And I especially resonate with the unselfishness of it, because, that was something Aaron Rodgers said that was just so impressive to him, was that like Jalen Ramsey never batted an eye, never complained, never did nothing. He just said, this job got to be done. I'm going to do it. And he did it well enough to help them win. And so that's why I think it's interesting that both are available here, but I'm with you. I still think that Patrick Queen is more likely to say, simply because of his age and the potential of, hey, if he has a great year, that like if he steps up and has a really good year in this new system that we put together and it just really works for him, we can sign him and keep him for a longer term. Or if he doesn't, well, we gave that a shot. Let's reshuffle the board again at linebacker.
Yeah, and the other, it's a really good linebacker class. So
that's the
I think they have that's an option for them too.
It is. Speaking of classes, let's talk about that 2023 draft class, because all those guys' contracts are becoming due. We'll talk about them and what Omar Khan said on them and what the plan might be for who to keep in that class. All that's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door. With easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great, they're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, and dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. Saves time and money. Home Chef covers customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. We're also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When pressure's on, that's when you need the right hire, and that's why it's a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people that you actually fit what you're looking for: skills, expertise, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post, you're actually getting answers. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Alan Saunders here from SteelersNow.com. Let's get to it, how Omar Khan addressed the 2023 draft class. This is going to take a couple minutes because I wanted to splice together my initial question of it. And then as we continue to ask about guys in that 2023 draft class, just a reminder that Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keeanu Benton, Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig, chief among all of them in that conversation. Here was Omar Khan as we were kind of working through those guys in our two discussions with him on Tuesday.
Omar, where on your priority list is figuring out the first draft class that you put together as GM? You know, Broderick Jones, fifth-year option, Keeanu, Joey, Darnell, and Nick. Yeah, so some good things to discuss there. As I mentioned, the Broderick, we're monitoring the medical part of it. That has something to do with it. And the other guys, we're not going to talk about specific negotiations, but there's some guys that we'd like to extend for sure.
When you look at the edge rusher position, I know you don't want to talk about any potential negotiations with Nick or anything like that, but if you were able to extend him or keep him, beyond next year, how do you manage that potential logjam with him and TJ and Alex?
Yeah, he wants to play more, and I think we all like to have Nick on the field more, but he's obviously someone that we'd like to have around for a long time. And, this defense has been based on those outside pass rushers for a long time, so you can't ever have enough of them.
How would you evaluate the progress that Joey Porter made this past season?
Yeah, Joey, he gets better every year. He's part of that draft class you guys asked about, and, it's been good. I'm excited for these guys, this new staff, to get to know him.
Omar, first of all, how's Darnell Washington's arm? And second of all, what do you credit his success from year 2 to 3?
Yeah, his arm's fine, by the way. No, should be no restrictions, no issues. It's just him who he is, and I expect him to get even better, and he had more opportunities too.
Is it a tough evaluation though, with going into a potential contract year?
Tough evaluation? I'll take 20 of them. He's a guy we want here long term.
But is it an added complication with paying Pat Freiermuth and needing to figure out balancing tight end with every other position?
I think to your question is, we're in good cap shape, so we have the flexibility to maybe do some things that might not be normal in people's eyes, but we have that flexibility. So the key is just keep as many of our good players under contract and locking them up. That's important. I really believe we have a good young nucleus of guys that are deserving of second contracts.
That last part right there, I really believe we have a good nucleus of guys that are really deserving of second contracts. Now, again, deserving doesn't mean everyone's going to get them, but at the same time, going through those names and how he's talking about them, saying I could use 20 more Darnell Washingtons, on the team. I think this is what to me could end up being one of the more impressive parts of what Omar Khan has done in his early tenure. Not only has him and Andy Weidel drafted these guys that are valued well, that are contributing early and finding ways. There's a chance that they could end up keeping most of them. Whereas, there's plenty of times where you draft, say, 4 or 5 guys in a draft class, and those guys, a lot of those guys end up leaving because you just can't pay everybody. I mean, you go back to the 2017 draft class and how, I just felt with TJ Watt and, Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner, like all the guys that they were able to put together in that draft class. And, a lot of those guys didn't make it to, past into a second big deal with the Steelers. But there's the flexibility to keep a lot of these guys. And if Omar Khan managed to reconstruct a new nucleus while going through this rebuild and still paying other guys and figuring all these other things out, I think that would be high up on like an achievement list that would go towards making the Steelers, major contenders again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. That's always been the plan. It's still not easy. I don't know why that plan has been so hard for so many people to see, but that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing stopping. Like, the Steelers did not draft well for several years in between, really, that 17 class you just talked about and this 23 class now. There hasn't been a class where there was more than one guy where the Steelers really wanted to keep, where the Steelers were really trying to negotiate with multiple players and juggle things to do it. And so, like, I don't want to say that these guys are all perfect, but, like, there's no reason not to keep them all right now. The stakes are low. Like, their cap situation is awesome. And so, really, it comes down to, if you do a good enough job of building a team, then some of these sort of questionable cases, like I make the argument, I don't think you're going to call Broderick Jones as some kind of success as a first-round draft pick, but the Steelers have the cap space to pick up his option if they want to. And, like, to me, I kind of think I would, pending his health, like, which is a big question mark. But, like, even if he doesn't turn out to be a great left tackle, $20 million is kind of cheap for that. There's no downside to these moves. They have a ton of cap space. Only if you get to a point where you've done this often enough that now it's the 25 draft class, right? And now you're trying to shoehorn these guys into a bunch of other guys who already got paid, then it might become an issue. But, like, right now, this is kind of easy work. Sign them all.
Exactly. And keeping the haul, I think, has got to be a primary objective right now, a high priority for the Steelers. And it's something where I want to talk about more in the coming days and coming weeks, because to me, this has been part of the mission. This is why the Steelers, I think, haven't been making as many wild signings and like they've been moving and shifting. Like it'd be one thing if the Steelers did this and like they kept the same, if Mason Rudolph was your starting quarterback this whole time, but they've literally been changing quarterbacks every year. They've been bringing in new free agents. They've been trying new things. They've been doing all these different things while trying to do this. And again, still been winning. They've been making a lot of changes while rebuilding this core while staying competitive. That, I think, is an accomplishment, because a lot of teams, when they're doing these kind of changes at so many different levels, and now this year they're also adding coaching change to this mix. This would be this is when that tanking happens. This is when the bad stuff happens, because it's just like, hey, there's a lot of moving parts. Things aren't settling into place. The guys here and there are just falling off, here everywhere. We just need time for this thing to settle in, and eventually we'll get there. But that hasn't happened. I think that's kudos to this front office for how they've built things and how they've made decisions. It's also kudos to the previous coaching staff and how they've kept things together. And I think it's kudos to how this organization, has run for years. And I think it's part of what the Steelers legacy. When people say, the Steelers way, this kind of becomes part of it. Even when you have those misses, like you said, from 2018 to 2022, the Steelers just had so many misses where it's left holes, and you see the impact of it. Not drafting Devin Bush is why they or not drafting Devin Bush and him not working out. Direct correlation to signing Patrick Queen. Not being able to land a quarterback. It's why they keep changing quarterbacks every year, because they have been, they missed with Kenny Pickett and it hasn't developed. George Pickens not working out as far as a long-term team option. It's why they went and traded for DK Metcalf. All these free agents they've been bringing in, it's been because they haven't been able to hit at these positions in those years. But under Omar Khan and Andy Weidel in this new front office, they've been hitting. And at least for now, these guys have developed into key players that are helping the Steelers win games. And they want to help them win more games, as Omar Khan says. They want to win playoff games. They want to get into, Super Bowl conversations. But I think when you get those guys, it's important to keep those guys, because that, to me, is the key to the Steelers way. When Kevin Colbert drafted good dudes, he kept them in the best era. And that's what built up those Super Bowl teams.
Yeah. And I think you got to get good coaching too. Certainly, we'll see how Mike McCarthy is able to contribute in that regard. There's a lot of unknowns here, but I think the plan has been clear and should be clear. This is a team that wants to build through the draft. I think they had 3 pretty good drafts under Omar Khan so far, and the idea is just to keep stacking them. And if you keep stacking them, eventually you get a pretty good football team.
Absolutely. We'll keep looking at this upcoming draft class as we're here at the NFL Combine. Players start talking today. We'll get to them as this week goes on. Stay tuned here on the Locked On Steelers podcast as we go over that. But Alan, let people know they can get more of your work as you're staying in tune with what's going on here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, A_Saunders_PGH on social media. SteelersNow.com is where you can find my written work and my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. Alan, thanks for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. My handle is always at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com, including my thoughts on what Omar Khan said about this draft class and my breakdowns of some of the different parts of this draft class and my top 100 big board pre-combine. As always, catch this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with more on the Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.